Do you want to go directly into the resolution, or?
Sure. We have, for the board, we have one more item we'd like to take out of order because we do have somebody in the audience tonight, and that is the Mabel C. Anderson Scholarship. So with that, I would call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Education to order. It is Tuesday, June 19th, 2018, and the Portland Board of Public Education is meeting at City Hall in council chambers.
I do not have the roll, so can I borrow yours?
Would the superintendent please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Atkinson?
Here.
Ms. Seeliger?
Here.
Ms. Vendil?
Here.
Ms. Davis?
Here.
Ms. Thompson? Ms. Morioni?
Here.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Presente.
Mr. Balfons?
Here.
Ms. Clater? Ms. Farah? Ms. Yuri?
Here.
Ms. Power-Rakowski?
Here.
And Chair Trevorrow.
Here. And Ms. Clater did let me know she is studying for finals. She has more finals tomorrow, so she's not with us this evening. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so with that, we will take out of order the Mabel C. Anderson Scholarship, which is...
It is...
which is B under new business in your agenda. Consideration and action to adopt a joint resolution honoring the gift of scholarships from Raymond C. Allen with the City of Portland. Is there a motion? Mr. Rodriguez, seconded by Ms. Seeliger. And would the superintendent like to speak to this item?
Yes, Madam Chair. Portland Public Schools is continuously enriched by philanthropy. Community engagement and support for our schools and students provides flexible income to support programs, projects, and activities, and it enables Portland Public Schools to enhance the student experience. It builds networks of friends and supporters, contribute to the long-term well-being of the school system. And for this, we are very, very grateful. The Mabel C. Anderson Memorial Scholarship Fund is a wonderful example of generosity and commitment to public education in Portland. Raymond W. Allen created this fund in 2009 with just over $15,000 with the intent to award scholarships to students who have attended Portland High School for at least 2 years, are in good academic standing with good attendance, and who have been accepted to a 4-year campus program in science, technology, engineering, or math. Over the intervening years, Mr. Allen continued to make contributions to the fund, and in 2015, at the time of his death, additional money from Mr. Allen's estate was added to the Mabel C. Anderson Memorial Scholarship Fund. As of April 2018, the fund totaled $1,190,733 with 62 cents. The fund is managed by the City of Portland, and this spring, 6 $8,000 scholarships totaling $48,000 were awarded to the following Portland High School seniors: Sonia Fagon, Reed Feel, Jessica Brown, Erin Hoekstra, Claire Burton, and Madison Mayen. Portland Public Schools joins the City Council to acknowledge the Mabel C. Anderson Memorial Scholarship Fund and thanks Mr. Raymond Allen and his family for his incredible generosity and support of Portland Public Schools and its students. I do want to point out that yesterday in these chambers, the City Council also joined in this recognition and passed a similar resolution on behalf of the Mabel C. Anderson Scholarship recognizing their contributions. And I do believe that Joanne Nelson, who is Mr. Allen's niece, and Ms. Anderson's great-niece, our granddaughter, is here to speak. So, Ms. Nelson, if you would.
Thank you. Okay, so we've already ascertained that I'm the granddaughter of Mabel Anderson, for whom the scholarship is named, and the niece of Raymond Allen. Mabel Anderson took care of Raymond when his young mother needed her help. Mabel already had 6 children at that time, the youngest of which was 11. She also took on the care of a grandchild who was born 10 years after Raymond, so she was taking care of children most of her adult life. Mabel also looked out for those around her, giving out bag lunches to men looking for work who arrived by train at Union Station during the Depression. Ray loved Mabel, who he called Ma, and was living with her when she died suddenly at age 84 of a cerebral hemorrhage. The family decided Ray should have the family home, so that is where he lived the rest of his life, on Valley Street. He continued the legacy of caring for his neighbors, his family, and now the college-bound students at Portland High School. Ray taught math at Portland High School for over 20 years. It's good to be reminded, especially now, that we humans are capable of great love, compassion, and generosity. When presenting the scholarships at the Portland High School award ceremony each year, we share some information about the lives of Mabel and Ray. I have received some very moving thank you notes from these students, and I would like to read excerpts from just a few of them tonight. Thank you so much. I was inspired to learn of Miss Anderson's kindness and Mr. Allen's gift of paying it forward. I plan to study engineering and hope to be able to follow in the footsteps of Miss Anderson and Mr. Allen. From another, I am sincerely honored to have been selected as a recipient of the Mabel Anderson Memorial Scholarship. My major of choice is biomedical engineering, and with my BME and hopefully my master's in biomedical engineering, I plan to help and change the world. I especially hope to find new solutions to climate change and to study genetics. Your gift is not only helping me, but also the future. From another, thank you for this extremely generous gift. It means so much to me that I am part of a community as caring as Portland High School. I hope I can put this scholarship to good use next year as I try to embody some of the same wonderful characteristics as the amazing man I heard so much about. I am honored to be receiving this, not just for the money, but because it means I have had an impact on the students and teachers around me during my time at Portland High School. Another student wrote, "Thank you for helping me on my way, and I hope to one day be able to help other young adults as you have. As it was put, I hope to continue the Pay It Forward legacy." And finally, thank you times a million for choosing to give me the Mabel Anderson Memorial Scholarship. After I graduate from Northeastern, I want to further my education and eventually complete my PhD in either civil or environmental engineering. I want to travel to third world countries and help allocate resources and develop ways to provide people with clean water. As a senior in high school, so much is bound to change in the coming years. However, my motivation, drive, and passion for helping others will never die. I promise you that this scholarship has not been given in vain, and I hope you will be pleased by my future endeavors. As I said last night, Raymond Allen expected and obtained high returns on his investments. He had faith in the students of Portland High School, and now I can see why. Thank you.
Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, any board discussion? Ms. Seeliger?
I would just like to say thank you to the family for providing the opportunity for students.
Ms. Davis?
Working with high school students in my professional non-board life, I know that for many of our students here in Portland who are low income and first generation, that scholarships make the difference. And scholarships of this size really make a difference, enabling students to go to college and actually live on campus, participate, and be a part of the full four-year college experience. So I really appreciate and want to say thank you for this generosity. It will change lives.
Any other discussion? I would just echo those exact sentiments myself. They've been very well put. Thank you. And with that, I would call for a vote. All those in favor of adopting a joint resolution honoring the gift of scholarships from Raymond C. Allen with the City of Portland, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in the affirmative. Thank you. So that brings us into report of the chair. I just wanted to report that on June 6th and 7th, our three major high schools had their graduations. I was able to attend Casco Bay High School, and Ms. Morioni was able to attend Portland High as well as Deering High, so I wanted to thank Ms. Morioni for being able to come to those, and we were able to have board presence at all three of the graduations. They were excellent ceremonies, I'm sure Ms. Morioni would agree, all unique in their own way, but wonderful to attend. I know I said this about our Paths graduation as well, but these are sort of the moments that really remind us as board members why we do this work. So it was great to participate in that and be part of it, and congratulations again to all of our Portland Public Schools class of 2018. We do have one more graduation, that's Portland Adult Ed, and that's going to be held next week, June 28th at 6 p.m. at Merrill Auditorium. I also wanted to report that we had the budget vote last Tuesday, June 12th, and our budget was approved with 78% of the vote. Thanks to everyone that came out to vote, and to everybody that was involved in the process, families, PTOs, and advocacy groups. It was a satisfying result at the end of a challenging budget season. Tomorrow is the last day of school, and I wanted to make sure that as a board we said have a great summer to our students, our families, our staff. I hope that it's relaxing, fun, and continues to be educational as well. And with that, we are also going to be taking a break as a board. It's our July break, so our next meeting following this will not be until August 7th. So I hope that board members are able to relax and enjoy some of the summer as well. And that concludes the report of the chair. Moving into report of the students, we have Paths. Ms. Powers-Rakowski.
Thank you. So this year at Paths, we had 198 graduates, and the graduation for the first time ever was at Merrill Auditorium, and it was great. And it was an amazing way to celebrate the students' accomplishments. This year, there were close to 14,000 scholarships for students going to places like SMCC, USM, Mecca, St. Joe's, Roanoke, Hudson, and many more. Some students are going right off to the workforce in places such as Moody's Collision, Duck Fat, Savory Yachts, HB Fleming, and more. This year, we had 23 students in the National Technical Honor Society, 24 if you include the one junior who got into the Honor Society. At our career fair, we had close to 40 vendors attending from places such as Portland Naval Shipyard, Maine Masonry, Lux Tree, and Maine Health. And many of our students left the career fair with job offers. And finally, this year there were 647 visits for fall enrollment, which is 83 more than last year, and 647 Of the 647, 219 of them were from the Portland Public Schools, which is about 34% of all of our visitors.
Wow. Thank you. Report of the superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to begin by thanking the Portland community for their support of our budget in last week's referendum. As everyone here knows, we had a challenging budget year this year, largely the result of state funding for our schools that was $3.5 million less for pre-kindergarten through 12 schooling. Throughout the long budget process, I was thankful for the level of engagement from many members of the community, parents, elected officials, and taxpayers. While there were many different opinions and ideas about how to go about building our budget, I never doubted Portland's commitment to quality public schools. In a high turnout election, 3 out of every 4 Portlanders supported the proposed budget. I'm incredibly grateful to the board, to district staff, and of course to our Portland taxpayers for advocating for and supporting our schools. I want to point out that during the budget process, we talked about doing some things differently in advance of next year. Specifically, we talked about impaneling a group to look at our district footprint and make some recommendations ahead of next budget cycle about that. And as you know, back in May, you passed a resolution with a directive to me to get that process organized, which we will do in advance of your August meeting. The other thing that we talked about numerous times throughout the budget process was creating another structure to look at alternative ways to fund our schools. During the process, there were conversations about looking at TIF funding. There were conversations about looking at different local options for fees and things along those lines. And there was obviously discussion about making sure that we do a better job of advocating in Augusta for the interests of the Portland Public Schools. We also talked about looking at the collective budget of the city and the district as one, sort of from the taxpayers' perspective, one experience, and thinking about how do we position our budget collectively. We have had conversations individually, and I have been in dialogue with the city manager, and I can tell you that City Manager Jennings is committed to working with me to build that strategy together for approaching the state, looking at state funding, as well as looking at other forms of revenue locally and having overall a better organized and more collaborative budget process next year. So we will not be introducing a resolution to that effect. Instead, City Manager Jennings and I will be working together. We will be developing a plan, and we'll be coming back to the board on an ongoing basis to update you of that process and how we're doing that work. I want to talk a little bit about the major school construction program. As I reported last week, the Maine Department of Education presented its preliminary list for major school construction projects. As you recall, we submitted Portland High School and Casco Bay paths for consideration. Between them, these two schools have an estimated $90 million in expected maintenance costs over the next 20 years, according to our facility studies, and are largely outdated facilities for the type of learning that we strive to provide our students. The Department of Education conducted reviews of 74 buildings across the state, and in the preliminary list that they issued last week, Portland High School was rated as 15th and the first high school selected, and CBHS Paths, that project was ranked 25th. We're reviewing the DOE scoring. We have already scheduled a briefing with DOE staff to that end. I believe it's scheduled for July 12th, and we will be reviewing whether an appeal of the rating is called for and appropriate. Historically, 15 tends to be at the upper end of the number of projects funded in any rating cycle, so we are cautiously optimistic that this could happen, but it won't happen imminently, which is, of course, disappointing. As we engage in our review of facilities and enrollment this coming fall, we will be able to do that with knowledge that this is our standing in the school construction, in the major school construction process at the Department of Ed. As you heard in our workshop before we began the meeting on school construction news, as you recall, earlier in the spring, the board approved issuing a request for proposals for procuring an architect and engineering firm to begin the building of the Lyseth building, for the Lyseth buildings for our future renovations that were approved by Portland voters in November of 2017. As we discussed during the workshop that preceded this meeting, we received 6 responses to the RFP. Over the coming month, district and Lyseth staff, along with members of the BFOF Advisory Building Committee, Matthew Winch, Jay Fuller, and Emily Figdor, will be reviewing applications, doing due diligence around those applications, and making a recommendation to me for the architect and engineering firm with which to contract. Our goal, as you saw, is to line up the architect and engineering firm in July so that they can begin the process of developing detailed specifications, which will be the basis of the building contractor RFP that we plan to issue in September. Because we followed the city procurement guidelines around a competitive RFP process, the board does not need to act on this contract, and I will be working with our attorneys to make sure that we have a good contract, and by the time we return in August, should be able to announce who that firm will be. Last week, the board met in an executive session to discuss school safety preparations, and this was an important opportunity to bring the board up to speed on the district's current plans and get feedback on possible improvements. We look forward to working with staff over the coming months to revise our procedures to ensure that we continue to incorporate lessons learned from our training and our experiences to make our schools safe and welcoming places for all students in our community. Finally, in case you didn't notice, it's summer in Maine. Our students are officially done tomorrow. Don't get up and go yet. And it's been a spectacular year. Our last board meeting was a day before we started our high school graduations, and I was so incredibly honored to have the opportunity to shake the hands of our 500 graduates as they walked across the stage, prepared and empowered for their future. Over the past couple of weeks, I've had the opportunity to watch our talented students at all levels show the depth of their learning. Whether it was end-of-year concerts, capstones, culminations to expeditions, or activist pitches, our Portland Public School students are a testament to the hard work of our staff at every level of the organization. I started my report thanking the Portland community for supporting our schools, and I want to end by letting the community know that their investment is paying dividends in every classroom, in every school. So our next board meeting will be on August 7th. A regular school will resume for students on September 4th. Summer school begins in just a few short weeks, and I hope everyone gets some needed time off and comes back ready to learn and thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Report of the Secretary. Consideration and action to approve the meeting minutes of June 5th. Is there a motion? Mr. Balfon, seconded by Ms. Morioni. Any questions on the meeting minutes? Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair. Just one misspelling of a name under the report of the superintendent, the sophomore with the Google, for Doodle for Google, Gordon, his last name is misspelled. That's it. I just wanted to pay respect to his name.
Any other questions? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the meeting minutes? Seeing none. Any other board discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes of June 5th, 2018 with that correction, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in the affirmative. Report of the committees. Curriculum, Ms. Morioni.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Curriculum Committee met last on May 29th, and the focus of that meeting was around IHCD, which is the Advanced College Placement Policy. And we had the principals from Casco Bay, Deering High School, Portland High School, all there, along with some assistant principals. And there was a full discussion with committee members as well as with Ms. Nally, our other assistant superintendent, focusing on possible changes to that policy. A lot of discussion was had, and it was going to be brought for a first read possibly tonight. However, Ms. Nally went back after the revisions were made back to the principals to review again, and it was decided that there was still some misalignment around what the high schools wanted to change, and so we're not going to rush it. We're going to bring it back into our committee in August and continue to work on it. So just stay tuned for that. And then with the other updates that happened on the 29th was around proficiency work that's happening in the district and with our staff preparing for the fall, the professional development that will be taking place with the teachers this summer around the proficiency work, as well as an update around middle school math curriculum rollout, and that will be starting again in the middle schools this fall. So lots of hard work being done by staff, and our next curriculum meeting again will be in August, but we don't have the date set at this time. So thank you.
Thank you. Operations, Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. So Operations Committee last met on May 22nd, and we had the second of 3 department presentations. We had our food service director, Jane Lucas, provided a very insightful presentation to the committee, giving us information on the setup and design of the food services operations from a district and a school building levels. It was incredibly informative, and I think the committee really appreciated the level of information and just the level of detail and some questions that came up based on the historical expectations from some board members, and kind of tying together some loose ends of how things were understood from that department. So I thought it was really helpful. And then as part of that presentation, we were joined by members of the Cumberland County Food Security Council and the Portland Public Schools Food Security Task Force. These people have been working over several months conducting a very in-depth and comprehensive needs analysis needs analysis based on some of the food insecurities that our students have to deal with, and also of the networking of the resources that are available within our community to meet these needs. So the most important work, or rather this most important work, is directly aligned with the Portland Promise whole student and equity goals, and I left that evening incredibly optimistic about the work that they're doing. The board is going to be receiving an update in August on that information, and we hope a plan to put forward in action. And again, incredibly important work. Superintendent Javier Botana has been very supportive of this group's work. And again, I'm excited to have them come in August and speak to the whole board. I think we're all going to be very, very happy with what they've put together. So the committee is going to meet again June 26th, so next Tuesday at 6 o'clock in central office, and we'll have our final presentation of the departments from transportation director. So we look forward to that. And I'm assuming soon we'll start looking at our next CIP process for the 2020 recommended list. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Finance, Ms. Bendel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to also thank the Portland voters for overwhelmingly supporting our budget. I think that's the biggest encouraging thing that we have, given the Finance Committee's work, given everyone's work, pulling in multiple hours over the course of the last few months, working with the city to make sure that we, had a budget that would support our students, support our district's work to the Portland Promise. I just wanted to let the board and members of the public know that the Finance Committee will be reconvening on August 14th at 6 p.m. At Central Office.
Thank you. Policy, Legislative, and Public Affairs. Ms. Seeliger.
So we've had a very successful year in the committee. We've gotten a lot done, and I'm happy to have had the opportunity to chair the committee, and we're going to be looking at two policies this evening, policy JICI and JLF, and hope returning the revised policy GICI, and look forward to hopefully passing them tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other committee and/or member concerns? Seeing none, we'll move into consent items. Would the superintendent read the consent items?
Yes, Madam Chair. Food Services received 4 tickets for a Sea Dogs game for their summer meals raffle from the Portland Sea Dogs. Food Service also received gift cards for 2 dishes of gelato for their summer meals raffle from Gelato Fiasco. Deering High School received a Wii gaming system with accessories and 11 games for their Functional Life Skills program to assist students with their motor skills from Julia Evans of Portland. Paths received a 2006 Chevy 1500 for their automotive program from Wayne Duffett of Portland. East End Community School received a bicycle for their Rise and Shine program from AAA of Portland. Ocean Avenue Elementary School received a cash donation to help families in need with clothing, shoes, and backpacks from Maria Russell of Portland. And Ocean Avenue also received a cash donation to purchase books for students from Elizabeth Miles of Portland. And I would like to thank all of our generous donors for their contributions to the Portland Public Schools.
And we have no board focus on educational issues this evening. Moving into old business, we have consideration and action to revise policy JICI, athletic and co-curricular activities, code of conduct for middle and high school students. Is there a motion? Mr. Atkinson, seconded by Ms. Vendel. And is the superintendent presenting to this motion?
I am asking Assistant Superintendent Crocker to present on this motion.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to bring back JICI for your consideration this evening. I think the timing is interesting because school ends tomorrow, which means that the clock is ticking for the beginning of preseason for the 18-19 school year, so all very exciting. There are 2 changes that were requested and have been made, so I would direct your attention to JICI. It's on the second page. Letter A, academic eligibility. High school. If you go down underneath that to number 2, you will see that the excellent suggestions that were made at the last meeting to build in the leeway necessary for changes that are being undertaken in our school district and in other school districts so that we don't need to continually come back to the board for updating. So I'll take the liberty of reading these. Portland High School and Casco Bay High School students must take and be making adequate progress to learning standards for 5 academic classes per semester, and here's the key addition, obviously, or the equivalent as determined by the principal. We thought it best, and this principals and athletic directors weighed in on this, to keep it somewhat general so that it will stand the test of time as we go through. I would predict each year with some changes. And then underneath, Deering High School students must take and be making adequate progress to learning standards for 3 academic classes per semester, or the equivalent as determined by the principal for the same reason. So I hope that that meets the needs that were put forth and will improve our policy going forward. And we also made the formatting corrections that were pointed out to us.
Are there any questions?
We also made the gender expansive.
Mr. Atkinson.
Can I ask operationally how the equivalent as determined by the principal, would that be something that a student who knows that they're not taking, let's say, the 5 academic classes at Portland High or Casco Bay, if they know they're taking 4 and doing something at USM, let's say, do they then need to go to the principal prior to the season starting and get some sort of written documentation, or are we going to be more sort of reactive?
I think in these changing times, it's going to make sense for students to come forward and, have that conversation in advance. I mean, it doesn't have to be that way, but you don't want anyone to be disappointed, and have everyone on the same page so that going in, no, that's not going to be quite enough. You'd also need to do, so if it's an internship, well, for that to count as another class, perhaps you need to add 2 more hours a week, whatever that might be. So we would be suggesting to students that this be done in advance for the well-being of everyone. It doesn't prohibit it from, coming later, but then there's not that promise.
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to make sure that we're communicating that effectively to both our student athletes and coaches, to make sure that they're getting ahead of that. Anything? No, thanks.
Ms. Yuri.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering about when it says 5 academic classes, do classes at like USM or SMCC count as one of those academic classes, or do they have to be at the school?
No, so that's exactly it. You're right. Those could be anywhere. They could be online. They could be at a college or a university. They could be an internship. It could be many, many, many things.
Yeah, so if it's something less traditional, like an independent study, would you just have to go consult with the principal and then have that approved?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I would open it up for public comment. Any public comment on the policy? Seeing none, I will close public comment and ask for a general board discussion. Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very excited about to support this policy finally and have it passed. But before that, I wanted to offer an amendment that I don't think changes the spirit of this policy, but might add something that board members will find valuable, I hope. Under the rules, on number 7, it talks about the students' responsibility regarding uniforms and equipment issued to them by the school. And it says that the cost of replacing damaged or lost uniforms will be responsibility of students and parents. The students may not be issued uniforms or equipment for new activity until all uniforms, equipment from the previous activity have been returned or paid for. I'd like to add one final sentence to that point, literally taking it from item number 2, which gives us a little bit of flexibility in the event that some students with financial hardships would encounter this problem. And the amendment would read as, all exceptions to this requirement must be approved by a building administrator / co-curricular administrator.
Okay. Mr. Rodriguez has offered an amendment, and Ms. Vendel will take that as a second. Are there any questions on the amendment? Ms. Morioni? No? Seeing none? Would you like to speak any further to your amendment?
Just very briefly, like I said, I just wanted us to have a bit of flexibility in the event of a student being on hardship, and that the expectation could be lifted based on the principals or the co-curricular administrators' perspective. Thank you.
Ms. Crocker.
Certainly not opposed to the amendment, but would point out that we do, as a general course, general practice, waive such reparations across the board when district-owned materials are accidentally damaged or lost, and would place a hardship on the family.
Not in the policy, but it is in our practice. You know, it's the same theory that goes into any, you know, insurance for computers and things along those lines, that we do not, you know, if there's a hardship, we consider those hardships, so.
Ms. Davis.
To have it as our sort of practice is wonderful for those folks who know that that's the case and know enough to ask. But for many low-income families, the rules, and immigrant families who may not know the rules, the reading this or knowing that this is what's written doesn't help and may really prevent people from seeking the assistance. And I think to have it really clearly in the policy, I would support. I mean, I have run into in my work students who thought about dropping out of school because they got a letter that said, you know, one of those official letters that said, you owe this, you know, a few $100s. And knowing how much lacrosse equipment can cost, having bought it for my own children, I think having something that really says up front that this can be, it's not just our practice when we choose to, but that it's actually our policy to allow for that practice makes sense and puts it out there so that people know that they can ask and will get a fair hearing about what their particular family situation is. Otherwise, it's just, for those who know that that's the case, they know. And for those who don't know, they may not take advantage of it and just withdraw and take themselves out of the sport or the competition without even seeking the help they might otherwise get.
I'm just going to go ahead into general board discussion because we have no members of the public. So anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? I would just say I would support the amendment. It doesn't seem like a, you know, inhibiting in any way, and it seems like it kind of codifies current practice, so.
Madam Chair, I wonder if we could have Member Rodriguez read it again a little more slowly.
Sure. So amendment is to add one last sentence to item number 7 on the rules of the policy, and it should read, all exceptions to this requirement must be approved by a building administrator / co-curricular administrator.
Okay, and with that, I would call for a vote on the amendment as was just read by Mr. Rodriguez. All those in favor? It's unanimous with the student voting in the affirmative. And so now we are back to the main motion. Any further discussion? Ms. Morioni.
Having, excuse me, having worked on this, it feels like for a couple years now, I just want to say thank you so much to Assistant Superintendent Crocker, as well as to our principals and our athletic directors. It really made a big difference in our policy committee to have them fully included and their voice in this and all of the work on the edits. And again, I want to say thank you so much to Ms. Crocker for her guidance and work on this, because it was very cumbersome and very hard but to know that the principals and athletic directors and even coaches had involvement was really important. So I wholeheartedly support this passing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of revising policy JICI, Athletic and Co-Curricular Activities Code of Conduct for middle and high school students, please indicate. It's unanimous with the student voting in the affirmative. You did it. Okay. And we're on to consideration and action to revise policy JLF, child abuse awareness and prevention training for school employees. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, seconded by Ms. Morioni. And would the superintendent or assistant superintendent like to speak to this?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and Superintendent Botana. I am happy to bring this policy forward for your consideration. Our colleagues at Drummond Woodsum brought this forward at the state level to all superintendents as a bit of a last-minute alert that there was a mandate for each school district to either create this policy or to update the policy prior to the beginning of the 2018-19 school year. So here you have it. It clearly is on a topic of extreme importance, but also one that, because of all of the legal aspects of it, we would depend on Drummond Woodsum to make the edits and to provide us with the policy as is required for us. And so we have done that. They have made those changes for us and presented it to us to move to you folks so that you are in a position to provide the support and have this in place as school begins. There was one question asked at the last meeting, and that was regarding the very end of the policy that speaks about preschool through grade 5 students receiving training as it would relate to this topic, and I have checked the new curriculum for the district, and it is indeed a part of our curriculum.
Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, any board discussion? Oh, Mr. Atkinson.
As we've been going through our policies, we've been trying to use more gender-inclusive language and eliminate the he, she's, and his, hers. And I'm wondering if that's appropriate to do for this policy, given all of the legal requirements and such. And I would prefer to go that way if we can, but understand that if this is something that we feel like needs to be fully vetted by the legal team, then anyway. Yes, I would love to propose an amendment to do that.
Okay. Okay, so that's an amendment seconded by Ms. Seeliger. And do you want to answer that?
I'll be very happy to bring it forward for any adjustments that we can make so that we are coming ever closer to our goal.
Any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, any public comment on the amendment? Seeing none, any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of Mr. Atkinson's amendment to make the policy gender neutral, please indicate. It's unanimous with the student voting in the affirmative. And now we're back to the main motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I call for a vote. All those in favor of revising policy JLF, child abuse awareness and prevention training for school employees, please indicate. It's unanimous with the student voting in the affirmative. Consideration and action to approve the regionalization MOU. Is there a motion? Ms. Morioni, seconded by Ms. Vendel. And would the superintendent like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, we're asking you to approve the interlocal agreement between the Brunswick School Department, Cape Elizabeth School Department, Gorham Department of Education, Portland Public Schools, Scarborough School Department, South Portland Department of Education, Westbrook School Department, Maine School Administrative Unit number 6, number 15, Regional School Unit number 5 and Regional School Unit number 14 to create the Greater Sebago Educational Alliance. At the previous meeting, we had a workshop that explained the rationale behind moving in this direction, and so I believe that the board understands the sort of the genesis of this and the direction that we are moving. I do just want to point out that not entering into this agreement would require that we forego $90,000 in system administration funding that is currently being held by the Department of Education pending the approval of the signing of this interlocal agreement, the subsequent ratification by the voters of Portland in November, should this move forward. And it would also negate our ability to access about $97,000 that the Greater Sebago Alliance would be eligible to receive to support its activities in addition to the individual district allocation. So that's one of the reasons behind this. In your memo, I also provided detailed responses from our attorneys and from the GSEA coordinators from the Department of Education regarding questions that were raised during the workshop. Specifically, there was a question about, I believe from Board Member Thompson, asking about the liability implications for individual school boards, for actions that would be taken by the GSEA. The gist of it, you obviously have significant additional details in here, but the gist of it is that the GSEA is a local government, a political subdivision as defined by Maine statute, and therefore would be itself liable for any actions that it took that were questionable and, brought on some form of suit or something along those lines. They will, and it is in their budget, carry liability insurance for that purpose. To the sort of the question, which is, could we potentially be named in a lawsuit? The answer to that is yes. Obviously, we could be named in a lawsuit. It would, our attorneys feel that they would, depending on the nature of the incident giving rise to the lawsuit, that they would be able to move to have us dismissed from the case because it would have been an action taken by the GSEA, but obviously our, attorneys, will always tell you that it's very contextual and it's what was the action that led to that. They did point out that there are limitations to liability under the Maine Torts Claim Act. So that was one of the questions. I think the other question was what would happen should the claim occur at a time when a member of the GSEA was inactive, so was in the dormant state that is considered in the interlocal agreement. And I think their answer is, the gist of their answer is kind of the same thing that would happen under the previous case. We would not necessarily be excluded from being cited for a liability concern because we were dormant on that issue, but obviously if it were on an issue that we were not participating in and things along those lines, it would obviously bolster the attorney's case in trying to get that suit dismissed. But again, it's all highly contextual, but the primary body that would be subject of the liability claim would be the Greater Sebago Alliance, and they would carry their own insurance that would not be included in our liability insurance. So with that, I don't know if there are any other comments or questions, but we wanted to be able to answer those questions that were raised previously.
Ms. Morioni.
Thank you, Superintendent. Having gone to a couple of the meetings with this, it was very helpful to learn more about it. One thing that still I just have a question about with regards to how much is the board informed when, let's say, the GES EA, let's say it's decided that like Portland would help take on the work of the English language learner, what's the term we use when we
Intake.
Intake, thank you. Intake of the students for other districts, and that so could it be that you as superintendent make that decision on your own, that Portland would then take on that responsibility, or is it brought back to the board for us to vote on the responsibility? I just understanding the board relationship to this work.
Would not be brought back to the board to make that decision. It would be that we would enter that as one of the subject areas that we would work with the GSEA on, which it isn't at this point. So it would be something that we would continue to explore. Before we got to that point, I would obviously do my due diligence to inform the board that this is now going to be one of the areas that we are going to consider, and whenever the renewal of the interlocal agreement would come up, this would be added as one of the areas that we would be working with GSEA on.
So as of right now, there's still been no agreement per se of that we would take on any responsibilities yet when we can.
At this point, we are entering into this with the expectation that we will work in the food service co-op, and the food service purchasing co-op, and in shared professional development.
Right. So the GSEA has a board, it sounds like, that's established, but that hasn't been determined yet who's on this GSEA
There
board.
is one representative from each district that is included in the
And then
interlocal
let's say, for example, Portland is not necessarily in the majority of a decision being made that would affect Portland. In terms of voting rights, can a decision be made by the GSEA board that we as a GSEA board would like Portland to take on this responsibility, and we as a majority can vote that that district will take on that responsibility, or anything to that effect?
No, I mean, you are still nobody can impose policy level decisions or, the allocation of resources to this body without this body's consent. So it's not.
And then how will the board be made aware of any decisions with the
That would be my job as representative to bring that information
you can get a
back to
continual update as to where things are and make sure.
you. You every week.
Okay. And with regards to having a board member who is involved in possibly attending, as I was doing before, is that going to continue?
So right now, the interlocal agreement calls for the superintendent to be the representative on the board, the superintendent or designee. In our case, it's been me attending the meetings, or Mrs. Crocker or Mrs. Gardner have been attending the meetings.
I would like to request that we ensure that we have a very close understanding of what's taking place in this as board members, particularly when it affects staffing as well as budget decisions.
Yeah, and obviously any staffing or budget decisions are things that staffing decisions don't come to the board unless they're teachers and principals, but the resource allocation decisions are all based on our approved budget, so there would not be there wouldn't be anything that we would do that would, again, commit the board to resources that didn't come to the board first.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Any further board discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the regionalization MOU, please indicate. It's unanimous with the student voting in the affirmative. On to new business, consideration and action to authorize the superintendent designee to approve hirings from June 20th through August 7th, 2018 for all budgeted vacancies without seeking prior school board approval. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, seconded by Ms. Bendel. And would the superintendent like to speak to this motion?
Sure. Each year, the school board authorizes the superintendent to proceed with the hiring process for all vacancies from June through the first scheduled board meeting in August, which, as you know, will be on August 7th, without seeking prior approval. This has been common practice over the years to avoid missing quality candidates. All new hires during this period of time will be brought to the board at the meeting in August for your approval.
Are there any questions on the motion? None. Is there any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of authorizing the superintendent designee to approve hirings from June 20th through August 7th, 2018 for all budgeted vacancies without seeking prior school board approval, please indicate. It's unanimous with the student voting in the affirmative. We've already covered item B, so we are on to personnel. Consideration and action to approve the personnel items listed. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, seconded by Mr. Atkinson. And would the superintendent like to speak to this motion?
So I believe that we have this split out into several categories, and I believe that those require separate motions. Barb, is that correct? So the first one is the consideration and action to approve the election of administrators. So we are bringing for your consideration and action the following individuals: Robin Bailey to become assistant principal at Lincoln Middle School. Miss Bailey, who many of you know, has been employed in the district since 1998. She is currently working as the interim assistant principal, and she's been teaching at Lincoln since 2000 as an ELL educator. So Ms. Bailey is the product of the Leadership for Tomorrow's Schools program, which the district sponsored, and we are incredibly happy to be able to welcome Ms. Bailey to the administrative roles. We are also proposing that Allison Dame be appointed as the assistant principal for Deering High School. Ms. Dame holds a bachelor's degree in environmental studies and religion and a master's degree in religion and secondary education. She has taught for the past 10 years and has been an assistant principal at the Abraham Lincoln High School in Brooklyn, New York. So we're very happy to be able to welcome Ms. Dame. You have met and approved Mr. Marley as the interim principal for East End Community School. Mr. Marley has been employed with the district since 2013. He was assistant principal at East End. Earlier this year, we went through a process to vet and select the greatest candidate for East End, and Mr. Marley rose to the top of that process, and we are very grateful that and looking forward to having his leadership at East End. And finally, Kelly Thornhill is who you also met today, has been the interim assistant principal, filling the position that Mr. Marley occupied until he became the interim principal at East End. And Ms. Thornhill has been with the district since the 2015-16 school year. She was a teacher in the district, and prior to that was a teacher in the Gray School District, and has done a fantastic job this year, and we are very excited to have Kelly join the administrative team as well.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, there is no public comment where this is a personnel matter. Any further board discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the personnel items listed for election of administrators effective 7/1/18, please indicate. It's unanimous with the student voting in the affirmative. Consideration and action to approve the personnel items listed, this one for election of probationary teachers effective 8/27/18, rehired from a one-year position only.
So this is the sort of the, oh, I'm sorry.
Is there a motion? Ms. Morioni, seconded by Mr. Rodriguez. Ms. Morioni and then Rodriguez.
Those two are together.
Okay, so this is together. It's not just the rehired from the 1 year only, it's
Okay.
also the probationary, the new probationary teachers that were.
Did everyone catch that? Okay. And would the superintendent like to speak to the motion?
Yes.
Welcome back.
So this is the first group of teachers that we are proposing for your consideration and action. These are, there's a group of 3 teachers that are being rehired from a 1 year only position, and then the others are all new teachers that we are very happy to have join the Portland Public Schools.
Any questions? Seeing none, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the personnel items listed for election of probationary teachers effective 8/27/18, rehired from a 1 year only position, and election of probationary teachers effective 8/27/18, please indicate. It's unanimous with the student voting in the affirmative. Consideration and action to approve the personnel items listed for sabbaticals for school year 2018-2019. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, seconded by Ms. Vendel. And would the superintendent like to speak to this motion?
Yes, Ms. Teller will spend a year-long sabbatical determining elementary schools' teachers' current beliefs and capabilities in the area of STEM, helping teachers to build capacity and lessons in this area, and looking at how the district can create a system that would give elementary teachers a partner in this work. The foremost goal is to increase the amount of STEM being delivered at the elementary school level, and there will be 4 phases to the project: data, information gathering, best practice and research, curriculum, unit development, professional development, and unit trials. The proposal is strongly aligned with the district's achievement and equity goals, and Ms. Teller, as many of you know, has been recognized as an exemplary teacher leader in the district and throughout the state, and she was the Cumberland County Teacher of the Year last year. I do want to point out that this is later than what is contemplated in the contract, and the rationale for that is that we held on bringing this to you for approval until we were sure that the budget, this position was included in the budget, but we wanted to make sure that this was, that the budget was approved before we brought it to you, so that we wouldn't create a false expectation if we were in a different situation. So that's why this was not brought to you in March, April, in the March-April timeline, which is what is considered under the contract.
Are there any questions? Ms. Moriani.
So I'm assuming Ms. Teller's salary will remain the same for what it currently is as the science teacher's salary?
Barb, she is only compensated half, correct, of her, yeah, so the salary is the same. She's 0.5 is what the contract calls for her compensation, so so that's it.
Ms. Bendel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's been a while since we've approved a sabbatical, but in the past, well, I should say, in the past 8.5 years I've been in this district, we've had inconsistencies in terms of granting sabbaticals and then not knowing what had happened following, their research and their professional development. And so I just wanted to make sure that we revisit that practice of having our sabbatical grantees return when they're ready to, within 6 months of coming back, to do a presentation to the board. If that would be possible, that would be great.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, any discussion? Ms. Uri.
I'm scooching over. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to, in front of the board, put my full faith in Ms. Teller. I love her so much. She is such a leader in education. And I think that her purpose here in the district is just so evident and so important, because there's obviously in the elementary school level an issue with STEM, and I think that's always been true. And I think that it is Ms. Teller's just ardent passion, and it's obvious to all of us, to address that in this district. So when she sees a need and a void, she fills it. And I'm so excited for her to have this sabbatical. I'll miss her while she is gone, but I think she will do an amazing job and will report back to this board with great research and information and just bring back so much enriching information for all of us. So congratulations, Ms. Teller. Hopefully, I hope you guys approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Uri. Any other discussion?
Okay.
Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the personnel items listed, sabbaticals, for school year 2018-2019, please indicate. It's unanimous with the student voting in the affirmative. And where it is before the hour of 10 o'clock, we would open it up for public comment on any items not on this evening's agenda. Seeing none, I will close public comment and call for a motion for adjournment. Ms. Davis, seconded by Ms. Mendel. All those in favor? It's unanimous with the student voting in the affirmative, and we